And hello everyone. I'm just making a note of how to create variables, both read-only and writable variables in Rust opcua, in case I forget. So the thing to do is actually yeah for me, I actually made a new read and write variables.rs file since the last video. I named it as demo3 read and write variables. Under my live demo mod, I just put a pub mod right here, and my demo 2, I do not want to run the server, and I want to use the module read and write variables, and I want to just use that function. So I can put demo 3 here, demo 3 read and write variables, run server. Okay, let's go to read and write variables. So where do we actually go and take code, okay, to do the read and write variables? So again, thanks to Lock A99 and contributors for licensing this under Mozilla Public License 2.0. Yeah, so the note, just in case anyone forgets, if you want a read-only variable, go to simple server under the samples, and you should be able to find it under main.rs, and we'll see it right here. Okay, so if you want to make variables, we actually take a look at this part. It says add variables of our own, and it's actually calling a function that takes a mutable reference to server and adds some namespace right here. This namespace, it just does this register namespace and it unwraps. So I'm just going to be lazy and copy and paste this code here. So the first thing to actually do, add variables. For adding variables, we need a namespace. Okay, so I'm just going to be lazy and copy and paste this code right here. So this is the namespace, and we're going to add some example variables. So I'm not going to do it in a function form. I'm just going to do it like together with a config. Then maybe if it gets too messy, we can actually move it into a function later on. Okay, so I'm just going to add a new node. So I'm just going to copy and paste and add a new node right here. Okay, so we are adding a node object. Okay, so this is a node. Okay, add new node object. So this node is actually just a way we classify our variables and objects. So we actually add a node first, and then it takes the namespace, which is a sign, I think, and then you can give it a node name. So I just call it let me call this a read only node, and then I'll just call this the read only node, because that's what it's doing. We store read only variables in the read only node. Okay, how do we actually add the variables? So this is the way we actually add variables here. Okay, first thing first, we actually need this mutable reference to the server. Okay, so we actually make the mutable reference first. Okay, let's make a mutable server reference. So I'll just call this the let server reference equals to nmut server, if I'm not wrong. So the server reference, I'm going to use it to get the address space. Okay, so not going to explain so much how it works. This time I'm just going to copy and paste because I'm just making notes here. I'm going to get the address space and then add the node to the address space. Okay, so this is what this part is doing. Okay, so what it says here, let mute address space equals to address space dot write. Okay, because usually this address space object here is under some kind of a lock. Okay, so we need to obtain a lock to make this writable. Well, sort of. Okay, this is because we are using a mutex thing. Okay, so that's what we are doing. I'm not going to explain too much. Just copy and paste it. Leave it there. So under this address space, we actually we make it like writable, so to speak. It's not really what it's doing, but that's a very oversimplified way of doing it. I'm technically wrong as well, but I'll just leave it as that. Okay, it's somewhere to get things started. So now we make a sample folder. So this sample folder, I just want to call it read only. Okay, I'll just call this read only. Sample. Read only G. So this is the sample folder ID, okay, which takes the objects folder ID from this node ID here. Okay, and you just apply the functions. I'm not going to really bother. So how to add variables? Okay, so we need the address space, we need a sample folder. Okay, so these are the arguments we need to use to add variables. So the way to do it is to just do this, use this variable new function, which I just copy and pasted. Put your variable here. Okay, my variable is called the read only node. Oh, okay, put the variable here which will be stored under the read only node. Okay, read only node. Okay, here's your variable name, which they call v1, but I'll just change this to read only variable. Okay, and what I want to do there is, instead of having an i32, I want an f64. Okay, so that will give us a read-only variable. Maybe I'll put it as 3.0. Okay, and let's take a look at our main.rs. If things print correctly, things are okay, we should be able to connect to it and see a read-only variable here. So again, same server. Okay, opc.tcp 192.168.7277 port number. Okay, I'll just call this the demo server. Demo server. Okay, connect. Okay, you see a read-only folder here. Under the read-only folder, we have a read-only variable under the read-only node. Okay, so this value is actually 3.0. If we actually try to change it, we will actually get an error because it says this node is a read-only. Okay, it's not because I named it read-only then that the variable is read-only. By default, if you set variables and you just add them to the server like that, the thing is that the variable will be read-only. So that by default it's read-only. So if you want to make it writable, you need to do something else. Okay, that piece of code that we want to look for is actually inside the demo server. Okay, inside the demo server. So I'll just go back to the samples folder, go to the demo server, and again I'll be copying and pasting code from the demo server. So go to the demo server. It will be under the control.rs, and here is where we can actually find a way of how to so-called get a write-only write variable, a writable variable. Okay, so what we can do, I'm going to copy and paste this code with very little explanation of how things are actually done. Okay, so let's add a writable variable, and the steps are pretty much the same. So this first step, the technically correct term is obtain a lock to write to the address space. Okay, and then you look for a folder ID. So you can see we are actually making another folder. So instead, yeah, you can see that these two steps are pretty much the same. We obtain an address space, we lock it up so that it cannot be changed by other threads or whatever. Yeah. So this is the proper way of explaining. I'm not going to explain too much more, but yeah, here's the folder ID which I want to put under this address space. Instead of control, I will put writable variable folder. Okay, so as you saw just now, it actually made a folder which was writable. And of course, I want to disconnect. Okay. And what is the node that I want? Okay, I'll actually make a writable node. Again, read only. I want to change this to writable. I'll just call this a writable node and I'll insert it into the variable builder. Okay, it will not be called abort. I will put another float 64. I'll substitute this abort out for writable variable. Okay, under the writable node. Okay, this is the writable node. Okay, I do not want a data type ID to be Boolean. I want this to be a float. Okay, if you're not sure, you can actually take a look at the autocompletes or your LSP, language server protocol. It will give you stuff that you can actually do. So I want to put it as a float or double. So I put a double here. Of course, you can do a float as well, but I'll just leave it as a double. And the value that we want to set as a default will be 0.0 f64. And that will be done. So what it'll do is that it will take a variable, use the variable builder, it will set it to writable. So this is the important part. Important. This is what makes the variable writable. Okay, so the fact that we use this writable function, right, or method here, that's what actually makes it a writable thing. So we are actually inserting another variable here. Instead of using this add variables under the address space, we're actually using the variable builder and doing pretty much the same thing. Now, if I had my way, I'd rather use this because this is this syntax is a little bit clearer for me rather than this one, which uses vectors. I do not really like, you know, doing this kind of vector thingy, but okay, this shows two ways of doing a readable and writable variable. So basically, I just copied code from the tutorials, and basically, if I run this code, I should be able to have a writable variable folder with a writable variable. Okay, so I'm going to connect to the demo server again. Okay, and you'll see there's a writable variable under the writable folder, which has a writable node, and this value is 0.0. I can actually change it to something like what, 7.0, 70. Okay, and it changes. So what I can do is I add this to the graph, and I'll make it update every 1 second. Okay, change it to 3.5. And then you see that the variable changes. 2.0. Okay, the variable changes. So that kind of demonstrates how to add read and write variables to this simple OPCUA server. And yeah, that actually is pretty good. Of course, you might want to change things along, like execute functions which do more than just printing the IP address. Okay, so that maybe I might make a note of it next time, but that's how we add read and write variables to the Rust OPCUA server.